a blockbuster trade happened
Yes,
a couple nights ago. Timberwolves and the Knicks agreed to a deal.
Forgot.
The Knicks get Karl Anthony Towns,
Time to put my Knicks hat
and
on.
the Timberwolves got Julius Randle, Dante DiVincenzo, Keita Bates-Diop, Daquan Jeffries, and a protected first-round pick that might
Probably
not
won't
convey.
Yeah.
It depends. If the Pistons are not a lottery team 3 years from now, that pick will convey. But that's a long shot right now.
Who wants to start?
I would
Knicks
love
fan?
to start.
Or you-
I would love to
which
start.
Knicks fan should start?
I would love
Definitely
to start.
one
Got
of
a Knicks
The
colors.
Knicks fan who's happy about the trade.
What about the Minnesota fan? I heard.
Oh, we do have it. We do have both sides.
What's the name? Joe Star was telling me that people were in the comments on your video, on the video you guys did from Minnesota, and they were like, "I can't believe this guy's representing us." Some shit like
I'm
that.
dead. That's rude.
No,
first
yeah,
off.
Jokic, because the comments were like, man, he really got a Knicks fan to do the Timberwolves breakdown.
That's good. I'll say this. I'll talk about Minnesota real quick. I like it, believe it or not. I've seen Julius Randle in an offense.
Wait, are we certain he's gonna be on the
Christ,
team?
this is twice.
I'm sorry. Are we certain he's gonna stay? Like,
I think
he's not getting moved.
like in 3 weeks when they play, he'll be there.
Okay.
I can talk now.
I'm sorry. The full details still haven't come out.
And your tweet was cool. Nas Reed starting over Julius. That I get it. Nas Reed's pretty cool,
no, that
but
was
that's
just,
not
that
happening.
was engagement purposes.
Okay, well,
and it did.
It did do well.
slight bang.
It did do well. Julius has been in an offense with two non-floor spacers, and Isaiah Hartenstein and Mitch Robinson, and both of those lineups have produced over 120 offensive rating. You needed spacing for Minnesota. You go and you bring in Dante, who made some of the most three-point shots in basketball last season, and I think it was a historic season for
was
three
second
made
in the
as
league in
well.
percentage.
So I look at the Knicks side now. Karl Anthony Towns is a center. You needed center play. You bring that in now. Essentially, the way I think of this Knicks offseason, you swapped Mikal Bridges and Dante DiVincenzo. Dante DiVincenzo is a better three-point shooter, but Mikal Bridges is probably a more
player.
all-around player, better player. And you swapped Karl Anthony Towns for Julius Randle. And realistically, you just added Karl Anthony Towns because when you were making your playoff push, when you were winning basketball games and not losing, you didn't even have Julius Randle. Now you go and you bring in Karl Anthony Towns. I'm not worried about this defense because, again, you're swapping DiVincenzo for Mikal, and Mikal is one of the best or one of the better perimeter defenders in the league. OG Anunoby has that versatility of guarding 1 through 5 as well. Karl Anthony Towns' job is going to be score the basketball, stretch the floor. You ask about a second creator. Of course, Karl Anthony Towns isn't this demon with the ball in his hand, but of course, that's another player that you trust that can go and get a bucket for himself. Jalen Brunson gets another floor spacer. That's all you can ask for because you can run a 5-man lineup that every single one of them can shoot, and that has not been the case for the Knicks in some time because, of course, you had Isaiah Hartenstein, either you had Mitchell Robinson, and I give Hartenstein his credit for being a solid connector because he had some touch near the rim as well and a really good passer. You lose out on that interior presence on the defensive side. But if and when Mitch Robinson does come back, which is probably December and January, you will get that back. But you needed another offensive piece, one that you can trust to space the floor for you. Julius really wasn't that, and really wasn't that high level of defender either. Really awesome rebounder. But now you get one of the best stretch fives in NBA history. To me, it's a win for the Knicks. It's a win for Minnesota. People that are saying that this is a lose-lose trade simply are missing the point. You needed spacing around Anthony Edwards. You got that in Dante DiVincenzo. And of course, you lose Karl Anthony Towns, but now you're off of that insane 4-year contract that you had to give money to Karl Anthony Towns, and now you have some more flexibility around the team. This was an amazing trade for both teams.
Now, here's the thing with the trade. I feel like the reaction to it at first glance was, why did they do this? Like from both sides. Then when you talk about it a little bit more, you can buy yourself into it, both from a Wolves perspective or Knicks perspective. Here's my thoughts on the trade. If I had to pick a winner, I think in the short term, the Knicks won. I think in the long term, the Timberwolves won. First of all, with the Knicks,
Put your phone on D&D.
the only reason why I am not that excited about the trade is because this is our all-in move. Yeah. You mentioned that we swapped out Randle for Cat. I don't even view it that way because Randle was unhealthy. I view it more as we swapped out Hartenstein for Cat, and then we swapped out Dante for Mikal because those were the guys that were healthy for us in the playoffs. And the way that I view it is, okay, is this team better than last year's team had we brought everybody back? Is it better than Brunson, Dante, with Mikal, with Isaiah Hartenstein and Mitchell Robinson and Julius Randle?
OG.
I felt like the Knicks lost a sense of physicality by losing Dante DiVincenzo, losing Isaiah Hartenstein. And that's what the Knicks were known for last year. We were known for the team that played with the most heart, diving for all those 50-50 balls. And I feel like Dante and Isaiah Hartenstein were huge parts of that. If we look at the team now, we traded 6 first-round picks, Julius Randle, Dante DiVincenzo, for Cat and for Mikal Bridges. Usually when a team trades a ton of assets, you are trading for more of a difference maker. And this very much shows me that the Knicks, this is the direction they're going in. Karl Anthony Towns, he is untradeable. Let's just make that clear. His contract is untradeable.
He just got traded.
Yeah, because the Knicks were desperate for a center, and we gave up an all-NBA player and one of the best 3-and-D role players to go get Karl Anthony Towns. For the next 4 years, Cat is making $50 million plus to $60 million. No other team is going to give us a good return on Cat if we end up moving on from him. Cat has never played in a market like New York. He's already one of the more scrutinized athletes. I'm really hoping that he succeeds, and I think the offense is going to be incredible.
Awesome.
We have a 5-out offense, and Dante attempted 8.7 threes a game last year. Cat was at 5. Last time Cat attempted close to 8 threes was 7.9 in the 1920 season, and he averaged 26.5 points per game. Cat becomes our second best offensive player.
Easy. And
we match up better with teams in the East. But with that being said, is Cat outplaying Embiid? No. Is Cat outplaying Giannis? No. Is Cat outplaying KP? It's a possibility, but KP could outplay Cat as well. And now he's the back line of our defense. And as a center, he has been in the 75th percentile as a shot blocker, but he's foul prone and he doesn't have good feet. And that can be exposed in a playoff setting. Our defense, with having Cat and Jalen Brunson out there, those are 2 huge liabilities. So for me, I'm happy that this is the move that we made because I think it gives us a better chance to compete. And nothing is ever guaranteed, right? But you look at how the Celtics built their roster. They got Kristaps Porzingis for who?
Marcus
no,
Smart.
and 2
Well, we got a
first-round picks.
pick, yeah.
2 first-round picks, and
You got
one of the
and
stupidest trades ever.
KP, I would say, is on a similar level as Cat, and Derek White is on a similar level as Mikal. And what did you trade to get Derek White?
First round pick. And
Really,
Romeo
not that
Langford.
much. Like the assets that you traded to get those 2 players versus what we traded to get our 2 players is night and day. The Pacers traded less for Pascal Siakam than we traded to get Mikal Bridges, and Pascal Siakam is the better player of the 2. So I am concerned that this is the move that we made because a year or 2 from now, if we are not in the conference finals, if we are not in the NBA finals, if Cat is not performing up to expectation, it could get ugly.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm excited to see this pairing. And from Minnesota, I don't even know if they're going to be worse. Julius Randle's an all-NBA player. And I think spacing is more than just shooting because Julius Randle now, he adds a different dimension to their offense. He can slash to the basket and he can take away some of those penetration lanes that Anthony Edwards usually would get because Anthony Edwards was the only player on Minnesota that can actually dribble, drive to the basket, and get to the lane. That's the only person. Now Julius Randle can do that. Dante DiVincenzo now gives them another alternative in their closing lineup, and you have flexibility for the future for Anthony Edwards' prime. 2 years from now, Rudy Gobert and Randle are not on the books. Trading Cat now allows you to keep Naz Reid, and now you have Dante, and you don't have nobody that you're committed to long-term for Anthony Edwards' prime, and you're not strapped. So now it gives Tim Connolly more options for his prime. But for the Knicks, this is our window to win now. But I just don't know if Cat is the needle mover to do that. And for our depth is shot. We don't have depth, and that was the strength of our team last year. And now we don't have that depth, and we don't have the same type of toughness from the players that we had.
Just losing Dante destroys your depth.
Isaiah Hartenstein too.
Yeah, your top bench players are going to be Josh Hart and Deuce. Which
Josh Hart's starting.
Oh, he's starting.
He's probably going to start.
He's starting. Yeah.
Josh Hart's probably going to start. It's going to be
Facts.
It's going to be Brunson, Mikal, Josh, OG, Cat.
Yeah, right. You have Mitch Robinson.
It's Deuce. It's Mitch off the bench.
True.
And then it's like a Landry Shamet or we waive Marcus Morris.
Outside those top like Yeah, I mean the bench isn't great anymore. This trade surprised me, shocked everyone, of course. I think for the Knicks,
Precious.
I think for the Knicks, it's interesting because on one hand, having a 5-out offense is going to help you against the Celtics, right? I think the Celtics are the team obviously everyone's looking up against, team that's been running the East for the last few years, won the championship. But also losing Hartenstein was just such a massive loss in this offseason, and I feel like that should have been the number one thing to replace, getting a guy that is more defensive minded first, maybe more of a connector offensively. But Karl Anthony Towns definitely increases the ceiling for this team. It's what Cat can be, right? Because he is, as you mentioned, Drew, probably the best big man shooter of all time. He's an elite 3-point shooter. It's just a bit difficult that if this is the move, like you mentioned, Joel, to go all in, was this the right move to make? Because trading 6 first-round picks, losing Hartenstein, losing Randall, losing Dante DiVincenzo, you're losing basically everything of this team in the future and a good part of your core in the present. So you're kind of losing on both aspects there. And Karl Anthony Towns, I don't know if he's the move you go all in to make. I do think it makes the Knicks better, so it's kind of conflicting in my head because I do think this makes the Knicks better, but I don't know if it makes you good enough to get over the top. But at the end of the day, you have to make some sort of move because I think going into the season, we still don't have the Knicks on par with the Celtics. And even after this move, I still think they're closer to the Bucks 76ers tier than they are the Celtics tier. And to be fair, maybe it's not fair to, compare these teams because Boston, just when healthy, is the best team in the NBA, in my opinion, right? And having KP healthy in the playoffs and all of these guys, it's going to be really tough to go up and match against them, really, no matter what move you make. But it just, to me, didn't fill a need for the Knicks, right?
For me, we need a center.
You need a center, facts, but I would rather have a center,
$60 million center,
a $60 million center, but one that's a great rim protector. It's just tough to find, of course, the all-in-one player that you're looking for. But I would have loved to have someone because Mitchell Robinson should be back in December and January. Will he be back? I don't know. When he comes back, will he be able to stay healthy? And then you're looking at a rim protecting team of Karl Anthony Towns and Precious Achiuwa. Like, I don't know, man. It's scary to go into that into a playoff series. Really even into the NBA season that's 82 games and so taxing, and there's not a lot of depth there. For the Timberwolves, I do think it's a minor setback for the upcoming season, right? I do think it's a small setback, but the flexibility you get going forward, I think, outweighs that. Because the current roster, the current core, don't know if it's championship core. Don't know if Gobert, and obviously Ant is separate, but Gobert, McDaniels, Cat, Mike Conley, I don't know if that's the group you want to build around Anthony Edwards. So being able to get off Cat, who, although is probably obviously your second best offensive player, arguably your second best player on the team, still hurts you in the short term. But I do think getting some of that flexibility, potentially adding players down the line is going to be key. But you also got to hit on those players, right? We know Karl Anthony Towns is a tremendous player, right? That Game 7 against Denver, he probably is the reason you won that game. He was the one who showed up in the biggest moments. But I do think Tim Connolly, this front office, said, this probably isn't the unit to win a championship with. So if we can move off Cat and you get pieces that you could potentially move, Dante fits seamlessly. Easy. I mean, Dante fits on 30 teams across the NBA, but especially this Minnesota team that needed 3-point shooting. You add even more perimeter defense. You mentioned it gives you another option to close. And then Julius Randle, if it fits, fantastic, right? But if it fits, that's great. You also get a secondary creator next to Anthony Edwards, who you have desperately needed, especially looking at these last couple of seasons when you become this playoff team, this type of contender. But it does get a little wacky when in terms of Anthony Edwards is going to be the guy with the ball in his hands in the crucial minutes, and having Julius Randle more as just like a spacer type of player who's going to be more catch and shoot than creator. I don't love that. But again, Randall is someone that could be moved off, potentially get either picks or other draft or other like role players down the line. So I still see it as a small step back for Minnesota, but nothing drastic that takes them out of the top like 4 teams in the West.
Now, Rib, before you go, real quickly, this my other concern, and then you got the floor. Last 4 seasons, Karl Anthony Towns has missed an average of 29 games per year. Last 4 seasons, OG Anunoby has missed on average 30 games per year. OG Anunoby's season was in the playoffs, he got hurt, and he has been injury prone. Karl Anthony Towns has also had problems staying on the court consistently as well. I mean, this past year, he just got hurt. And the Timberwolves, without him, actually had a better net rating and a better win percentage. this might be an addition by subtraction for the Timberwolves because Dante is making $11 to $12 million for the next 3 seasons, and as a starter, he averaged 18 a night.
You're a funny guy, Joel.
It's one of the best contracts in basketball.
Why am I a funny guy?
You're a funny guy because you're the one constantly telling us, wait till Cat comes back, wait till Cat comes back, wait till Cat comes back. Minnesota's going to go to that next level. Wait till Cat comes back. Now it's an addition by subtraction.
And he did come back. What are you talking about?
But you're
They
saying
went to the
they were
WCF.
gonna-
Yes. In order for the
But now
Wolves,
you're saying it's an addition by subtraction?
in order for the Wolves to reach their ceiling, of course they need Cat. But in the regular season, when you watch the lineups with Nas Reed and Gobert, they were just as productive. When Cat wasn't on the floor, they had a better net rating, they had a better win percentage, and this isn't just removing Cat. You're removing Cat and adding a 25, 10, and 5 player to the team in Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo,
Who's also
who
gotten
averaged.
injured back-to-back years also.
Yes, he's not as injury prone as Karl
He's
Anthony
not,
Towns.
but it's one thing to keep note.
Yeah, but Dante DiVincenzo just averaged 18 as a starter and
Dante's
shot 40% from 3. You look at the Wolves bench. Dillingham shot 44% from 3 in college. Nikhil Alexander-Walker shot 39%. Dante DiVincenzo shot
bench is
41%.
OD.
Nas Reed shot
Super
40%. Joe Ingles shot 43.5% from 3 last year. The Wolves now
Rich on
have
Joe Ingles, but I respect it.
It was crazy.
the Wolves now have more depth. I mean, Joe Ingles in his limited minutes with the Magic was all right.
Yeah, he's like 38.
Like there's
No,
still
he's
not,
really old.
Getting Dante obviously gives him a huge boost. This isn't a still prolific 3-point shooting
But so,
team. Now you're
also,
saying
are you
that,
closing with like Conley and Dante on the court the same
You could
time?
close. You got a lot of options. You could close with Ant, DiVincenzo, Nas Reed, Randall.
I think you
and
need. I think you
McDaniels
need
or
Conley, on,
Alexander
unless
Walker.
you think Julius Randle is good. But I thought last year, especially when Conley went down to injury, it's like, well, we need
I
that.
know,
We need
but I
him.
think Dante can bring up the ball, and I think Dante can handle it, and he can attack closeouts as
He's
well.
about to be the number 2 option on the squad.
No, it's Julius Randle.
Ball handle.
No, it's Julius Randle.
Second ball handler will be Julius Randle.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, he was that with the Knicks.
I agree.
And he averaged 25, 10, and
just-
5.
But
like that.
apparently the rumor is that Dante wanted more.
Yeah, we don't know if that rumor is
That's
true.
why I'm asking a
But
question.
ultimately, Dante DiVincenzo, he was in the 74th percentile in pick and roll ball handlers last season. He was really good as a pick and roll ball handler.
What was his
and
usage like in that? Do you know? Top of your-
his usage, his frequency was not that low. It was like 5 to 10% frequency that he used that in. But Riv, you got the floor. You could go.
I'm still trying to process the trade, honestly. I think, like, first of all, it happened at the ass crack at like 2 in the morning, and it was such a random trade.
10:30.
No, he's lying.
It's like 10:30,
It
11.
was so calm.
It was such an exaggeration, but whatever.
It was late.
But it was late nonetheless.
That's crazy.
Anyways,
It's like the Kawhi. He's acting like it's Kawhi Paul George. sorry.
anyways, I heard you guys said a lot of okay things.
Just okay.
I just don't know. I don't know why the perception of Cat has changed now that he's went to the Knicks.
You feel like it's got better?
I feel like
No.
people are acting like this is not a player that still struggles to protect the rim without Rudy Gobert. Not a player who still struggles to attack mismatches on a consistent basis. You know, a player who, yes, he showed up in that Game 7 against Denver, but he doesn't have the greatest playoff track record. And you mentioned you talked about how the team is kind of injured. OG, Cat.
And Brunson just broke his wrist in the playoffs.
I wouldn't even say Brunson. It's somebody else on the team. Mitch, injury prone. Like that's just what they are, and that's half of your depth. Like I believe in Deuce. I think Deuce will be fine for the regular season. I do like Tyler Cole, like the point guard you guys drafted. I think he'll be able to get into the rotation.
Shamet.
I really don't want to see
Campaign.
him or Campaign. I don't want to see them two in the lineup. I really don't. If you're there in the lineup, there's bad things to come. But at the same time,
That was like Alec Burks 10 minutes.
Albert ain't
Kind of
terrible.
cooked. That's what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
he ain't terrible.
That's what I'm saying. You never know.
Yeah, but
You don't know if they're gonna drop 18 or 0.
I know
though.
Cam ain't getting you 18 for sure.
6
But
threes.
Cat is the 5. You needed another big. I think Isaiah Hartenstein was your most important defender last year by far.
For sure.
And I think losing him is so important because I think he was your primary rim protector. He was your best screener. You know, he was the guy that was your best roller. You know, you didn't have that consistently with Mitch. You know, he had the little floater to his game, handoff options. He was one of those guys. You know, his IQ was just so high, and then defensively, he was amazing. You know, he was a great offensive rebounder. So, Cat he helps with some of that. You know, great shooter. He is a good rebounder. You know, he also offensively is a good post up player. But in a series, not in the series, but in the playoffs, you're going up against Embiid, Bam, Giannis. Like these are prolific type bigs. And when he was going up against Jokic, he had Rudy Gobert to back him up. You know, he had Jaden McDaniels. He'll have the same wing defense, probably better. but he doesn't. He's going in with more responsibilities as the anchor in New York. I think playing Mitch and Cat is cool, but at the same time, I don't even think Mitch would be available enough. He just has shown that in his career that he's not. You can't rely on him to be available or healthy. I think for Cat though, it's going to be interesting because him, Brunson, Mikal, OG, it's a nice spacing thing. The idea offensively is really good. Tom Thibodeau has never been the biggest brain when it comes to offensive schematics, so I'm interested to see how this works. Interested to see how this goes. A lot of Julius Randle and Brunson was handoff, ISO, find the mismatch. Cat and Randle aren't the same type of players. Randle, I think, is a more effective player in isolation. I think that's more of his game. So I'm interested to see. And Brunson runs pick and rolls, but it isn't like pick and pop type vibe. So it's going to be a little different. And I'm interested to see how Tibbs works with that. Because like I mentioned, he's more of a defensive minded coach. He's never been this offensive schematic guy. I do think this does make you slightly better because I think Cat is more available than Randle. I think Cat is a semi-better.
He's a better fit.
Yeah, he's a better fit. I wouldn't say better player because I think Randle's a better playmaker, and stuff like that. But he is a better fit for you guys. So it is going to be good when you have these 5-out offenses. But when you have players like Embiid, when you have players like Giannis, those would be the tough series. As for Minnesota, I don't know. I think financially it works. I think financially you want to be able to give the flexibility to bring in players or trade for players to help Ant in the future. But I felt like coming off of WCF, you shouldn't want to build for the future. You should kind of want to build, maybe not to, not every team can say they can win it, but definitely keep yourself, like keep a egg in the basket. Like, we want to still really compete. And I don't know if a lineup with Jaden at the 3, Randle at the 4, Rudy at the 5 can really do that. I love Minnesota's bench right now. If Dante is coming up the bench, I love the fact that they have Dante, they have Rob, Alexander Walker, Nasri. That's an amazing bench. Even if you don't add Joe Ingles, I love those 4 guys coming up the bench. That is dope. I think that would help Rob too because now he has a shooter next to him in Dante DiVincenzo that he can play off of or he can play with. You have Alexander Walker for defensive purposes, and Dante's a fine defender. He's no slouch on that end. He definitely gives his effort. But we saw last year without Mike Conley, this team really struggled offensively to get into their sets to create offense, and I think Ant has to work on that this offseason, which I'm assuming he is. He's working on that playmaking department and getting better in that. I don't know. Randle and Rudy seem weird. It definitely does. Jaden seems weird in that lineup because I saw some stat where Randle was pretty efficient from the corner, from the 3-point line.
He shot 50% from the corner.
But you're not going to put Randle in a corner.
And that was only 1 year, too.
Yeah, so it's like that's just not what you're going to do. And I get Randle's kind of like DeMar DeRozan in a sense where he's not a 3-point killer, but he still garners that type of attention.
Could shoot it, yeah.
And he's a good playmaker and stuff like that. I'm just going to, that Minnesota, I'm more interested to see how that works than New York. I think New York will be a little bit fine in a sense, but New York, $60 million for Cat. I mean, that's a lot of money. That's a shit ton of money. And they're already capped up with OG at 40. They just gave Brunson a nice little bag. They were planning on paying Mikal. Yeah. They have Josh Hart, his nice little bag. So they're really strapped to these 5-6 players.
We're over the second apron.
Oh, yeah, for sure. That was locked.
I think that was the plan.
No, for sure. Yeah. I think you're going to rely on just second-round picks, late first-round picks of some sort, like rookie role players or vets to really come in and help these 6 guys that are kind of solidified. But you have arguably the best 6 guys in the world outside of like Boston. So realistically, you go in there with a fighting chance. You have Cat. I think for both sides, looking at it from different lenses, it does make sense. I'm very curious to see the fits, though.
With Minnesota, I think Tim Connolly had a lot of courage in breaking up the team because he knew it wouldn't have been received well. Karl-Anthony Towns is beloved in the city, and I do feel bad for Karl-Anthony Towns because he gave a lot to Minnesota. But in the same breath, you just mentioned it. Why do you break up a team that just made the conference finals? Well, if you're using the best case scenario, oh yeah, this team could make the championship. But what we just saw and how they got beat by Dallas, they're ways away. How OKC just improved this offseason, they're ways away.
Are they ways away or is it just matchup dependent?
I think they're ways away because the Timberwolves were over the second apron just with Ant, Cat, Rudy, and Jaden's contracts, those 4 players. So they wouldn't have been able to sign any free agents, and they don't have their draft picks. So the only way that this team improves is internally, and you're hoping that Rob Dillingham improves the most. But Conley's getting older. Gobert's getting older.
Conley's probably done after this year.
And then Nickeil Alexander-Walker's a free agent after the season, and Naz Reid has a player option after this season. So you are very well looking at a team next offseason that would have lost Naz Reid, would have lost Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Then we're looking at this team with those 4 core players, an agent Mike Conley who's a year away from retiring, and Rob Dillingham. That's their bench. There is no way to improve that team further. So I think Tim Connolly said, you know what? I don't think we can make the NBA Finals. I'm going to break up this team while Cat is at his highest value. I think if Cat were on the trade market last season, he doesn't go for Julius Randle in this version of Dante DiVincenzo with a first-round pick. Cat's value last year was in the gutter to the point that you thought there might not be anybody to the equal level of Cat that you're going to get back in the deal. But the Timberwolves were able to get an all-NBA player, a multiple-time All-Star, with one of the best 3-and-D guards in the league with this trade, and now have flexibility for the future. So that's why I could see the perspective from the Wolves and for the Knicks. My anxiousness comes from, is this the move that's going to take us over the top? You know, because Karl Anthony Towns, now that he's in New York, a lot of Knicks fans are just like, yeah, this is what we needed. This the guy. You know, I watch Cat. You know, I watched Minnesota religiously for the last 3 years. I know the good and I know the bad with Karl Anthony Towns. One of the things about Karl Anthony Towns is that he historically does not rise up to the moment. You mentioned how...
Game 7?
Yeah, I say historically, Drew. Not just one game.
Well, that's what you did for me recently.
How did he play in the conference finals?
They all played terrible.
To be fair,
that was
Julius
recently.
Randle's way worse.
Karl Anthony Towns...
Like, easily.
Of course.
But that's comparing trash
But
shit.
Karl Anthony Towns in the conference finals was the worst defender on the court. He was the one who's getting picked apart the most. With Karl Anthony Towns, you mentioned now, yeah, the Knicks have another guy they could go to. Am I crazy? In the playoff setting, if we face against the Bucks and Giannis is guarding him, or the Sixers and Embiid is guarding him,
that's when you rely on your number one,
and KP and Tatum are guarding him, am I comfortable in saying, yo, Cat, just go get a bucket?
No, that's why you have Jalen Brunson.
I think Milwaukee's a very bad matchup.
Because you mentioned both Embiid and Giannis when you talked about Karl Anthony Towns. You mentioned the best player on their team and the best player on their team, respectively. Karl Anthony Towns is not the best player on his team. It's Jalen Brunson.
Yeah, but Dame is better than Cat on the Bucks.
Maybe
Maxi's better than Cat too.
That's probably.
What do you mean? Maybe.
No,
I think
Dame better than Cat.
Yeah.
I gotta see how
maybe.
Dame looks this season.
What do you mean? Dame just
even
averaged
on the
26.
better.
But
Dame was better
next to
than
Giannis, we haven't seen him play that brand of
I
basketball.
feel like last year he was still better.
Is Paul
than
George
Cat.
better than Cat?
Yes.
And now
He's
closer.
a
That's
third
closer.
guy. He's a third. Maxi's better than Cat.
I
That
think
I can
Max
hear.
is better than Cat.
for sure.
Maxi's better. Than
So
Cat.
that's what I'm saying. Our second best player isn't as good as these other
Well,
top
it talks
teams.
about your whole
best player.
team. The whole
The team
Knicks
is deep,
mantra is
yeah.
that your
team is
starting
not
five.
deep.
It's just when
awesome.
you,
But we're not deep
true,
outside
true.
those
I mean,
All I
I'm
care
saying
about
the
is
top
starting
5,
five.
6 are like usually you have like 2 guys who are dudes, and then like 3, 4 fall. Like obviously Brunson's that guy, but like 2 through 4, like they're all really, really good players.
And I think the Celtics starting 5 is still better than ours.
It is
For sure.
But it's
the,
closer.
The Bucks and Sixers, I think they're it's close. Like it's close. Like people want to say that this trade might have made us by far and away the second best team in the East. I still view us in a tier with the healthy Bucks and the Sixers. It's going to be a dogfight with those teams.
I agree.
You have to catch that.
No, I agree. I think I just think when you give up all that you gave up and you didn't get back, like I don't know, is Cat a top 20 player?
No.
Is top 25?
When you what you're saying, when you don't get a top 10 player, like when the Lakers traded for Anthony Davis,
Yeah.
they
Understandable.
gave up
We
all
also
their assets.
I was gonna say we traded the house.
You had to.
But they traded the house.
The house got traded for McHale.
But then you add on Julius Randle and Dante. All of these pieces are available. 6 first-round picks, Dante, Randle, and you like. I get it. You
And we
can only
lost
trade.
Hartenstein in the process.
You can only
You
trade
couldn't
what's
bring him back,
available.
whether you wanted to or not.
But to be fair, right? Because
You got 30
and
M's.
it's different scenarios.
What are you gonna
But
do?
It was front-loaded,
We
though.
also had questions, or at least I had questions about when we got KP, right? His injury history, what does he look like in this way different scenario than it was in Washington? What's he gonna look like in the play? Like all of these questions, and it was like, holy shit, he got hurt. But like that game 1, the whole regular season is like this dude has changed the team, right?
I also
So
think Joe Mazzulla is a better offensive
I agree.
mind than
I
Thibodeau.
agree. Yeah,
Thibodeau is primary defense.
And
which-
he's a fucking amazing.
and we've seen what he's been able to do with centers. Maybe he
you are
helps
changing
translate Karl
kind
Anthony
of
Towns'
the
defense.
culture-ish of the
They're
team where
already-
it's more
he already coached
offensive
Yeah, you're
minded.
changing schematically.
Yeah,
That's also
it is
true.
more offensive minded than
Yeah,
it was
when
before.
Tibbs coached Cat, they didn't have a good relationship at all. And
he's too
Cat
tough.
Cat had to go out and say, "Yeah, we're good now." This was like a a year ago.
Wiggins too. You know, of the younger guys, they weren't the best with
Thibodeau probably had to okay the trade himself too.
For sure.
No, I know, but I just think those personalities don't really mesh. But Cat, defensively, I think he's pretty capped out. I think he's improved defensively. Last year, he was a good defender, but it's a different dynamic. You go from being the first line of defense and Gobert behind you to now you are Gobert. You are playing that role. You have to have great rim deterrence, or else, you know, even with the great wings, you can call up Jalen Brunson and get a switch on him, and then you could blow by him. And then Cats are last line of defense, and he gets into foul trouble historically.
He does.
And to also be fair, Hartenstein did not play like this prior to this season.
No, he didn't.
Defensively, he's always been great.
He had flashes with the Clippers.
Yeah, he was always great
This
defensively.
level, though, I feel like maybe because he got extended minutes.
He was his best.
The role he played in New York was different
ahead
than
of
he
him.
was.
So, you know, but defensively, he's always been amazing.
Listen, the one thing that I think is a positive for the Knicks is that last year, the teams that made the NBA Finals, the Celtics and the Mavericks, first and second in 3-point attempts per game. I think the Cat addition now, that's what we want to be offensively. We want to take the most threes in the league. I feel like that's what we should be. Yep. With Mikal, with OG, Josh Hart's going to be left open because he's the weakest shooter of the bunch, and he can be streaky as well.
And we saw him in the playoffs, though, cook the hell up.
Yeah, but he's historically like a 35% three-point shooter.
Hey, man, hit him.
Yeah.
OD, facts. But he said he felt a fucking click in his wrist, and now he knows how to shoot again.
But then with Cat, I think if he gets to 8 threes a game, like he did in the 19 and 20 season, he can average 25 a night, and that's what we need from him. We need Cat to become the best version of himself, because I think up to this point in his career, he's always left us wanting a little bit more in his game.